What is up, guys? We're back talking about Dexter. Last night was episode 7, titled Course Correction. And I'm not one for hyperbole, but I honestly think this might be my favorite episode of Dexter since maybe the first 4 seasons. Everything about this episode that I liked, every single advancement of each individual character I enjoyed. I think it had tense moments, it had hilarious moments, it had phenomenal performances all around, especially by Michael C. Hall. I mean, he never fails to amaze with what he can do with Dexter, even in some of the lesser seasons, but there was so much on display in this episode that I thought was just some of his best work. We finally get that really tense confrontation between Dexter and Batista that we've all been waiting for a long time, but especially since the finale of New Blood when Dick teased us with it and then never gave it to us. So yeah, this is one that I watched it, I smiled, I laughed, I fist pumped at certain moments. I was just so happy with what happened here. And, you know, we've only got 3 episodes left, but it really feels like they're delivering on all at this point. Like, I really don't have any more doubts. You know, of course, there's a part of me that's like, please don't hurt me again in the finale. But yeah, I don't know. This was awesome, absolutely awesome. So per usual, let's just go through the events of the episode, and it starts off with kind of paying off where everybody is going inside of this helicopter. You've got Prater, you've got Charlie, you got Dexter, you got the Gemini Killer, and Ponytail Guy, all going off in a helicopter at the end of last episode after it was revealed that the Gemini Killer is actually a twin. And it shows that Prater has this little castle property that he either owns or is rented for them to have like this little day retreat. And so they're there sipping on wine and enjoying charcuterie boards and things like that. And they come in, and the first thing that happens is that Dexter finally gives up on this vegan shit, where he's like, okay, let me see if I can just, if I could slip this into my little fake character arc here. So he comes in, he's like, you know, this stuff looks so damn good. Like, it starts to remind me of why times I wasn't a vegan. And so now he can just start eating meat like he always wants to, which is a fun little moment. And, you know, they're sitting around talking about everything. And eventually it's pretty much revealed to Dexter that, hey, you know, it's about time for you to give your little show and tell presentation, right? Because back in episode, was it 4? They had the whole presentation where Lowell showed all of his tattoos and the victim that he's currently pursuing. And so Dexter's like, fuck, okay, how am I going to do this? And you get this great scene where he's off in a room with his hoodie and he's like playing a character. He's like trying to pretend what the dark passenger would actually say and what his thoughts would be. And it's a really funny scene where you just get to see Michael C. Hall just go wild. But he very quickly, through the recommendations of Ghost Dad, decides, you know what, let me just be myself, and I'm sure that'll work out just fine. So you get this whole scene where Dexter, as Dexter, they just don't know it, is basically giving a little bit of an insight into his life, where he talks about the mask. And, you know, he's portraying it as if this is the actual psyche of the dark passenger, when he's really just getting kind of this cathartic moment where he's able to fully bare his soul in a way he's never been able to, even to people that knew his secret. And so he talks about having to always act like this person that he's not and put on these fake emotions and smiles and interactions. And the only time period that he gets to actually be his real self and let the mask off is however long somebody's on his kill table. And for as much of a rush it is to feed that urge to kill, it's incredibly sad when it's over and they take their last breath, because now he realizes the mask has to go back on. And it was just a brilliantly written scene, because obviously we kind of know that about Dexter, but we never really heard him describe it in the way that he has described it. You know, I almost feel like with moments like this that we're possibly going to be heading towards Dexter having a really dark turn by the end of Dexter Resurrection, whether it's 2 seasons, 3 seasons, however many. I do think we're going to start heading to a point where obviously we're going to keep this Batista versus Dexter thing going for a while. And as fans of the character, of course, I love Batista, but like, there's not really like a scenario there that you're completely happy with. Like, you want Batista to get vengeance and to, you know, if anybody's going to make Dexter face what he has done, it needs to be him. And at the same time, because we love Dexter, you don't necessarily want him to have to face the music either, even though he deserves to. But I really do feel like moments like this, he lets us into his psyche about how even all these years later, with a son, with, you know, a wife, with all these different relationships and friends and all these people that have been, you know, he's left in his wake, there's still a part of him that is never going to feel completely whole because he's his biggest and best self when he's killing. And so in that moment, to me, it was almost like a subtle little nod, in my opinion, that maybe over the next couple of seasons, we're going to start to see Dexter slip into a level of darkness we've never truly seen him in. Because we've seen him do some bad stuff, of course. We've seen him make some mistakes, but he's always kind of the anti-hero, you know what I mean? He's always trying to do something, take out somebody for the greater good. And I think at some point we're going to get shades of Dexter in this series where he's actually going to become the villain, as he should, you know, very much like Breaking Bad. So I loved that entire scene. And what was tense about it is that you see everybody else kind of like, like almost refreshed at how different of a presentation this is. But the look on Peter Dinklage's face initially seems unsatisfied. Like, I kind of just wanted to see victims, but okay, whatever, I guess that'll do. And so you're left in this spot where it's like, did he make a mistake? Did he make an error of judgment there, thinking that he can bear his soul when this guy really just wants the carnage? And you get a payoff where he's sitting down and he's eating again with the other two serial killers, and you know they're acknowledging how interesting his little speech is, and then Prater calls him away and basically reveals that his speech was fantastic, that like it touched him on a way that nobody's speech, nobody's little show and tell thing has ever really impacted him, and it causes him to kind of bare his soul to Dexter, who he thinks is Red, about the death of his parents, where we found out in a couple episodes ago that he is an orphan, that his parents were killed. And he tells the story about how this man murdered his parents. And as a child, he actually wrote the guy in prison because he wanted him to know how much pain he caused him. And it ended up developing into this very weird, codependent, like pen pal relationship where the killer had no sympathy, very clearly expressed that he kind of acknowledges, doesn't care, maybe even enjoys the fact that he's causing pain to this kid and any other family members of his victims. And there was some kind of a weird symbiotic thing with Peter Dinklage as a kid where him doing that made him feel more connected to somebody than he ever did his parents. And so there's a lot of information that you get here, not only just about the psychology of why Prater does this with these killers, why he has this little group, why he has these little getaways, but something I'm going to talk about at the end involving the more clues towards the identity of the New York Ripper. It gives a couple more questions, a few more directions to go with that. So another really good scene with them. And I think Peter Dinklage's performance has been fantastic so far too. At some point you have Batista, who is very much still trying to push these detectives to keep pursuing his theory that Dexter Morgan is the Bay Harbor Butcher and his son is responsible for this killing that they've been investigating since episode 1. And both of them are pretty much exhausted. Like you can tell that, is it Officer Wallace? I believe it's Officer Wallace, Detective Wallace. You could tell she's not really satisfied with the conclusion that it was Mia, the Lady Vengeance. But at the same time, it's like she's like, I can't pursue this anymore. There's nowhere left to go. I've turned every single stone, and he's just kind of operating on conjecture that they don't have any emotional ties to. And so he's at a stalemate with them now, and he keeps saying, like, do you really think it's a coincidence that she died right before we were about to talk with him? And they're like, do you really think that this guy is just going to break into prison, kill her, kill the security cameras, and then sneak out before we can see him? Like, obviously, the truth lands somewhere in the middle. Dexter is involved somewhat, but didn't directly do it. And I've seen a lot of people, too, have theories that Lady Vengeance isn't actually dead. Now, stranger things have happened in Dexter, but I think it's pretty definitive that she's dead. I don't think that there's any reason why they would keep her around. We'll see. It'd be a nice little surprise, and for whatever function they would have her be there for, I'd be there for it because I love Kristen Ritter and I really enjoyed that character. I was a little bummed out she got snuffed out so quick, but if I had to put money on it, I would say that she's probably dead. So yeah, now he's pretty much at a point where I think he asked for like, can I have access to DMV records? And this eventually leads him to Blessing's home. So he clearly looked up Dexter, where his, home of address is inside of New York, where he's operating from. And he goes and has a little conversation with Blessing, where there's a lot of double speak there, where, Blessing is telling him all these things, and Batista's looking back at all the times that he worked with him and how easily he got along with everybody and how much everybody just immediately, he was family, and he just chameleoned his way into any group, any amount of people. And he's starting to look back where, years ago, obviously, it was just like Dexter was this great guy. He was my best friend. He was family. And now he's looking back at it and he's like, that crafty little fucker. He's been doing it this whole time. Now he's doing it to these people. Barely been here a month and he's already got a fucking place to stay and they're calling him family. This is what he does. And so eventually we get back to Dexter and everybody at this little retreat. And you get this awesome sequence here with him at first kind of flattering the Gemini killer. I think his name was Gareth. And then provoking him, which I did not see coming. It was very cool. So now obviously he sees that, there's a twin. He doesn't know how much he knows. Like, does he know his brother's dead? Is he here fucking with me? Is he, continuing to now hunt me now because he knows I'm involved? Like, what is going on here? And so he just kind of talks with him just to see what he says, and does the kind of the same routine that he did with his twin brother, where it's like, oh, I'm such a big fan. You're my idol. And I started killing because you inspired me and all that crazy shit. And while he's not as immediately arrogant and is just soaking it up for his own fucking self-validation like his brother was, at a certain point it cracks him where, he tells him like, hey, I figured it out. You're a twin. And at first he's very much like, shut the fuck up, dude, because he doesn't want Prater or anybody else to find out. And then I think he's kind of impressed and lets his guard down a little bit and starts to explain about how him and his brother kind of created the Gemini killer and how it all, how their modus operandi works, and very much in a much more subtle way appreciates that he's being idolized by this other guy. And very quickly it turns at a point where Dexter has this great line where he talks about, is it true what they say about twins where like you guys can feel each other's pain or whatever? Did you feel a little pinch in your chest at 7:30 last night when I plunged a knife into your bitch brother's fucking chest? And he's like, what? Did you feel the burn when I threw his body parts into the furnace? That was awesome. So very quickly it turns into a confrontation, and the Gemini killer smashes this glass and goes to attack him, and then Dexter goes into theater mode. Oh, somebody help, fucker! And then turns it around and sticks it into his neck and takes a piece of glass and gets his little blood sample first. Everybody runs over. What the fuck? Why did he attack you? And very quickly on the spot, he makes up this whole thing about like he was over here just talking about some weird shit about how we all think that we're badasses, and he's going to show all of us how real how his notoriety is, where he's going to take out Lowell and then me. And so all in one fell swoop, he finishes off the Gemini killer completely, cleans up that loose end while also cleaning up the loose end of Lowell being missing, which we know he's dead. And so if they find out that he's dead or he just never comes back around, now they will blame the Gemini killer. And so now it's really just the guy from Modern Family, and then of course Prater himself. I have a feeling Charlie's not going to get caught up in all this. I feel like there's something going on where she's going to help him or something, but I don't think she's going to end up being an antagonist for Dexter. But it was a great scene. Now, did I think that it was maybe a little too easy for him to convince Prater that nothing is going on? I think so. He seems to be such a cold, calculated, and smart guy that it's been slightly contrived for me how in the last couple of episodes he's not suspecting anything. One person gets jailed, one person goes missing, he completely leaves his original house and all this other stuff. And at one point he says, you're hiding something from me whenever he's talking to his son on the phone. I would feel like there'd be a little bit more suspicion there, but nonetheless, he completely takes Dexter's story as gospel, and he's like, oh yeah, here we go. And Charlie's the one who's like, he always killed in twos. Now all of a sudden he's killing you guys one by one. Like, this shit ain't adding up. But Prater doesn't really want to hear it. So I could understand the argument that maybe that it feels a little bit out of his character. At least that's what I'm picking up from how smart his character is. Maybe he's an idiot. He's just rich as fuck. But yeah, great sequence. And I thought it was a really fun way to get a different performance out of David Dismalchian while also killing, like, what do you say, 3 birds in one stone. That stuff was great. Now, meanwhile, Harrison is trying to pursue this college career, And so he's at this little university. Dexter's supposed to meet him there. And like classic Dexter, he's late. He's, off doing other things. So Harrison ends up having to go through this entire campus tour by himself. And he immediately starts getting this very like flirtative relationship with this blonde girl who's like kind of gothic, who ends up being the tour guide. And as soon as he started flirting with this girl, and she was definitely, semi-aggressive with being very forward, like pretty much letting him know, like, I want to jump your bones. My first thought is, okay, so he's going to get from her what he's not getting from his friend that he actually has true feelings for, who seems to be hesitant about this whole thing. And that's going to push his friend to suddenly feel jealous. And I'm curious what's going to go on with that. I hope it doesn't get too like junior high-ish, but I think that's what the whole function of this is going to be, is like pushing that entire little that little love triangle thing into motion. Eventually, Dexter is able to land back in New York and get to Harrison. And when he gets there, the tour itself is already over, but they have like this little presentation where, unbeknownst to Dexter yet, Harrison is thinking of going into criminal law, so they have this little guest speaker. And Harrison walks in, and it's none other than Detective Wallace. And I actually, where I could see some people saying that was contrived, I actually liked this moment, because to me, it pays off really well. At first, it was like, what are the odds? But I think it was worth it for what the scene eventually kind of comes to. So he kind of initially looks like he's going to leave and then decides to stay and listens to this whole presentation on the New York Ripper. And right when she's starting to talk, or getting ready to talk, Dexter comes in. And I love the moment where, he comes in and like he looks, and I can't remember if he has seen her before. I know he was tracking Harrison in this whole thing the first 2 episodes, but regardless, in the moment, to me, it felt like Dexter recognized the look in her face, because she sees him as like, holy shit, it's that guy that the other guy was saying is the Bay Harbor Busher and putting all these things together. And he sees her putting things together, and he's like, the fuck? And so he goes and sits next to Harrison, and he's like, isn't that the chick? Yeah, it's the chick. Did you know that she was? No, I didn't know. And so they go through this whole presentation where she starts to talk about the New York Ripper. And I'm here to say, I've seen a couple of people, understandably so, say things like, I bet this New York Ripper thing's not even going to end up being anything. It's just something that's going on. It's not actually going to be tied to a reveal. It's going to be a big nothing burger, in response to the amount of theorization that people have had. At this point, it's literally a Chekhov's gun. They've mentioned it so many times. They've pointed us at it so many times that if the gun doesn't fire by the end of it, it's going to be a gigantic hole in the story that they've decided to choose. So if they had just mentioned it inside of Prater's little museum, then I would have agreed with you. The amount of times we've gone back to it, especially now with this whole presentation and everything, there's no chance they're not going to pay this off in some way. Either by having somebody that we already know this season who's going to be taken out be identified, or by setting it up as the big bad for the next season. But anyway, she gives this whole presentation, talks about how the New York Ripper was basically disemboweling people, gives a very graphic photo, and how he to this day, he doesn't kill anymore, but he still calls the family of his victims and taunts them, because he needs to like feed that urge with knowing that he's causing pain out there. And needs to like relive those emotions through kind of reliving these moments, trying to feed his urge through reminiscing, basically. And when she said that, my mind went to 2 different places. Because remember, I said in the last episode, like as a fun little theory, and I've since done a couple of videos on TikTok and everything, talking about how cool of a possibility and how out of left field and a big swing it would be to have Jonah Mitchell, Trinity's son, come back as the New York Ripper. And I go through all my reasons why in the last video. Go check that out. But I said even in that video, it's very unlikely it's actually going to be that. It's probably a lot simpler, and it's most likely going to be Prater. Now, when she said that about how the guy is like trying to relive things through talking to his victims, my mind went into 2 different places. At one side of it, it's like, okay, well, that pretty much fits with what Prater's doing. He's trying to feed, if we're operating under the assumption that he's a killer who has retired, he's trying to feed that darkness inside of him by basically living vicariously through other people. And I kind of said that in the last episode too, that would be his motivation if he is revealed to be the Ripper. But with this story that we've had now that Prater has given us about this guy who killed his parents, even though I think this would be a very left field but unsatisfying answer, I also think that it leans into maybe giving a little bit, hopefully a red herring, that the guy that killed Prater's parents is actually the New York Ripper, because he was very much trying to like keep feeding his urge by knowing and remembering that he has caused pain to Prater, who is the family of his victim. So it fits with that very much. So that's kind of like a new person to throw on the board now as a possible identity to New York Ripper. But nonetheless, she goes through her whole presentation and everybody gets let out, and she stops to talk to both Dexter and Harrison. And, you know, Dexter goes into theater mode, and he's like, yeah, your buddy Batista came to me. And he kind of gives this look at first like, oh, that motherfucker. And he's like, oh, really? Oh, that's cool. And he kind of gives this whole alibi, if you will, that Batista never really was the same after Dokes was revealed to be the killer. And even less so after some other people like LaGuerta were killed. And all of a sudden he just started pushing everybody away and pointing fingers. And I don't think he convinced her, but I think it was good enough for her not to have super alarm bells going. But you get this cool moment where, you know, Harrison reveals that he's thinking about becoming a cop. And his explanation for why I actually did think was convincing for her, saying like, hey, I know this is weird given how we know each other, but seeing how determined you were and how you went after this person who did this, like, it really inspired me. I want to do this. And she seemed satisfied with that answer. And then she goes back to Dexter, and he gives this little great kind of throwback moment where he's like, you know, I couldn't help but notice the blood spatter on this picture here. You know, your crowbar theory is good, but it seems like it's a longer weapon, you know, something that could be like flung up and down, maybe like a hook. And he's already seen what the weapon is, so he's really just trying to like throw her a bone, the way that he always did back in the day, where he's fucking solving murders in 20 minutes and then letting Miami Metro continue to pursue it for 6 months. So that was a cool little moment there that was like a classic Dexter nod. They go upstairs outside of this little conference room. Harrison runs into this girl again, and yet again, she's, you know, he basically gives Dexter the hint, like, get the fuck out of here so I can flirt. And she's very direct about what she wants to do with him. So as I already said, there's going to be something that comes with that that's just going to lead to the other girl finally, you know, shitting or getting out the pot. And you get a moment where Dexter buys a little proud dad hat and has a conversation with Harrison. And you get this nice moment where Harrison, you know, he's like, hey, you know, your grandpa and your Aunt Deb would be proud of you. And then Harrison says, you're actually the person that inspired me. And it felt like in that moment, like Dexter didn't quite know how to handle that information, but you could tell he appreciated it. Like him doing what he does, even though it's the twisted version of it, has inspired his son to do it the right way. And it's just furthering the fact that I really love what they've done with Harrison as a character this season, a character that I could not stand for most of the season in Dexter New Blood, even though I understood where he was coming from and why he was that way for a lot of things. It was just too one note. And so I really love what they've been doing with him so far as a character, where he still has some of that complicated, flawed nature. He still has elements in him that are like Dexter, but he's very much trying to be the person that Dexter can't seem to make that little final push to be, which I think is going to pay off really nice by the end of this series if they continue that out for the full payoff for what the potential is. So now they part their ways or whatever. Dexter goes back home, and, you know, like at this point in the episode, it's like you could end here and it's still going to be one of my favorite episodes of the season in a long time. But he gets all the way home, and he's just kind of lovingly looking over his trophies and kind of rehydrates the blood from the other Gemini and makes a little double blood slide, which is really cool. And then he starts to hear this Cuban music, and he's like, it reminds me of Miami. Motherfucker. And I loved his look, like, this son of a bitch. He goes upstairs, and, you know, fucking Batista's up there salsaing with Blessing. And you get Batista's version of surprise motherfucker, which was great, where he sees Dexter like, surprise, hermano. And it's like, this is what I fucking came for, baby. And I think that Dexter and David Zayas are just doing incredible with their performances. Michael C. Hall, excuse me. Sorry, he's like synonymous with Dexter for me at this point. But yeah, Michael C. Hall and David Zayas are just doing phenomenal work playing off of each other. They've never had this version of their characters and their scenes together. And it's just wonderful to see where they're both putting on this mask for everybody around them, but in their eyes, they're looking at each other, knowing the truth, like, I got you, motherfucker. And so I died laughing whenever it shows Dexter, it gives him a hug or whatever. He's like, hey, you know, buddy, it's getting late. Why don't you let me give you a drive home? And like, they both have that fake smile on, and then it just hard cuts to them in the car, and they're both like, as soon as it cut, I just fucking died laughing. And then you get like basically Dexter's equivalent to that scene in Breaking Bad where Hank shuts the garage door and finally confronts Heisenberg. And it was beautiful. They're driving, and you know, Dexter says something along the lines of like, I'm going to say this once, leave me alone, get away from here, and don't ever come around my son again. And Batista's like, you really think I'm going to give up on this shit? Like, you really think I'm just going to let this go? And they both realize in that moment, like they're kind of at a stalemate. There's no getting out of this. One of the, like, we're heading to a confrontation, and one person's going to come out on top. And you get a great moment where, you know, he keeps going, and you think I'm going to let it go. That, you know, what happened to Deb and to, Maria LaGuerta and everything, and Dokes, and Dexter slams on the brakes, and you get this moment that's great. That's, you know, I could see somebody saying maybe it takes a little bit too much inspiration from Breaking Bad, but I didn't care. Where he looks at Batista and he goes, you know, if I'm the person capable of these things that you think I am, then you know this isn't going to end well for you. And the look on Michael C. Hall's face is just chilling. Very reminiscent of that whole, like, you better tread lightly moment from Breaking Bad. And Batista just kind of looks at him like, try me, bitch. And he tells him to get out, and you see Batista drop something down, and he goes off. You get a great needle drop. And he's driving away, and Batista's sitting there in his little fucking fedora, like old detective, looking at him drive away with the New York lights behind him. And he pulls up this little tracker, and he had dropped his AirPods in the car, and so now he's tracking Dexter. I fucking loved that. That entire scene to me was just like, oh my God, like that's all I wanted in New Blood. If we had gotten something like that in New Blood that obviously was more definitive, I wouldn't have been near as pissed off about that ending. And the reason that a lot of us were so angry about it, aside from Harrison shooting him, was like, you teased that and then paid off nothing. And now we finally got it, and it was fucking glorious. And it's just the beginning. It is just the beginning. We have so much more to experience with these two characters' confrontation. I've seen a number of people drop comments or like, Batista's he's going out this season. No, there's no fucking way. Where do you go with the show if you do that? First of all, if they kill Batista like he's just the big bad, like he was going to do with LaGuerta, that will literally ruin this season for me and possibly the show. Like, we have gotten two different versions of Dexter facing the music endings. And it's not the fact that Dexter faces the music that they suck. It's how they made him face the music. Oh, he self-exiles by driving into a fucking hurricane and turns into a lumberjack. Fuck you, that sucks. Oh, he has his asshole son that we don't like and don't really sympathize with that much. Kill him for doing something extremely stupid and impulsive in this jail cell. Fuck you, that doesn't work either. But having Batista finally get the answers to everything and get him dead to fucking rights, give the closure to everybody else at Miami Metro, finally exonerate Dokes. There's so much about that ending that is the perfect ending for this show. It doesn't need to be that Dexter dies or, you know, Dexter goes to jail. Either one is satisfying to me if they do it right with the ultimate payoff of his confrontation with Batista, the one person that no matter what, never suspected him, never doubted him for a second, finally seeing that mask come off. That's what this whole show is going to be about. So if they abandon that just to have fucking Dexter get out of a tight situation, just kill Batista or have something stupid like he gets in a fight with Uma Thurman, Uma Thurman shoots and Batista gets killed. If it's anything like that, prepare for another fucking rant video that gets 300,000 views on this channel, because I will lose my shit. But I don't think that there's a chance in hell that's happening. I think they've learned from their mistakes by the proof of how damn good this show has been so far. So yeah, I am so fucking ready for where this confrontation goes from here. Now, I did want to talk a little bit more about the New York Ripper stuff. Now, I talked about it a little bit already. I think that there's things that are given in this episode that gives a little bit more validity to the theory that it could be Prater, and I talked about why there. I think it fits with the reason why he has this group, and even the origin with him kind of getting something fed to him by the story of his parents' killer, just hearing about it, living vicariously through them, I think fits. But I also think that you can put his parents' killer literally on the board. I would not like that answer. I would think that's totally unsatisfying because we've only seen him in like a somewhat flashback kind of sequence, but it's possible. It does add up. But I want to revisit the Jonah Mitchell thing very briefly. And again, at this point, I do still think it's a long shot. I think most likely the simplest answer is the correct one. It's going to end up being Peter Dinklage. But two things have added even more steam to my theory about Trinity's son being revealed to be the big bad for the next season. One is that you have the videotape, the audio tape that is played during Detective Wallace's little presentation that has the actual voice of the New York Ripper as he calls and leaves voicemails to his victims, and it's absolutely not Peter Dinklage. And I haven't sat here and like gotten super nerdy with it where like I have a video of the actor who played Jonah and then the video of this scene and played them back and forth, but it certainly was a closer match to what he would sound like. But that's, that's a big old lingering thing. You could have millions of explanations, voice change or whatever. That could end up being a nothing burger. But another one that I think makes it even more fun, even if it's just the actor having fun. But if you go to the TikTok of Brando Eaton, who is the actor who played Jonah Mitchell in season 4 and season 6, he dropped a video yesterday, and it's very brief. And it could absolutely just be tongue-in-cheek, his way of kind of having fun with the theory that is gaining a little bit of steam, I guess.
I just got back from New York. What's everyone yelling at me about?
Oh, this reveal is going to be a ripper. Could it be the actor just like fucking around, having fun? Like, oh, okay, you guys think that, let me play into it a little bit and we'll keep the steam going. Yes, absolutely could be. And likely that's what he's doing. But could it be that he just confirmed that we're going to see Jonah Mitchell revealed as the New York Ripper? It's at least possible. It's at least possible. And, I'm not confident enough to take credit for this theory. I did not see this theory anywhere until I posted it. And then suddenly a bunch of Dexter Twitter accounts that follow me started posting it as a fan theory and some other stuff. Nobody credited me. So it could have been that theory was already being whispered about, or it could be that, whatever. I said it, everybody else ran with it. Who knows? I'm not going to claim that it was my theory first. But as far as my own headcanon goes, it's my theory. Because I was watching a recap video of season 6 and had that light bulb moment of like, oh, fuck, that would be cool. And if you didn't have that light bulb moment or see my video or somebody else's, I think that's one hell of a surprise that hopefully I don't ruin for a lot of people, and likely won't, because it's probably going to be Prater. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just continuing to have fun with this, guys. I'm not really one that gets into theories and speculations and trying to tie things together with a little fucking red yarn board or whatever. But this is one that if it ends up being correct, I'm going to have a lot of fun with that reveal being confirmed. But nonetheless, guys, episode 7, course correction. I mean, the title in and of itself is like, this is the ultimate course correction from season 8 and New Blood, because now this is basically as close as you can get to classic era Dexter for me. And we'll see by the end, maybe by the last 3 episodes, I will say it's up there with the first 4 seasons, but it is damn close. I love this episode. I cannot wait for episode 8. This is going to be the longest week wait of the entire season so far. So let me know all your guys' thoughts on everything that happened this episode, your theories on the New York Ripper, anything that you have to maybe combat some theories out there. Let's have fun and talk about it down in the comments, and we'll see you in a week. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2025 new release review. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my other Dexter reviews and rankings. I've covered every single season of the show, as well as every episode of New Blood in this show so far. And I'm going to put my ranking of all the Dexter seasons up here for you to enjoy. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.